Let's talk about the Packers. Aaron Rodgers. He's a guy that's been moving up your board a decent amount in recent days. I learned as I was double checking my projections today. You got him at 395 out of 600 for a little over 4,700 yards, 34 touchdowns, 6 picks. That puts him as your quarterback 9 on projections, which I think is up from 13 just a few days ago. And you got him as your quarterback 8 on the big board. I actually think you're low on both. But why'd you move him up?
I think just the fact that he's there, active, engaged with the team finally again, led to me bumping up his statistics quite a bit. I've always projected them as if Rodgers was there, but a little more conservatively. I bumped him up a little bit. The most recent, I do actually have him down to 4,365 yards.
What? When did you do this?
I don't know if you're looking at the my Wolf training camp update versus Wolf projection 1.
No, I'm doing the training camp update.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly when that happened. There was no real justification or reason for me lowering him other than I've gotten a little bit higher, more bullish on Aaron Jones having a monster season and him seeing a little more work this year. But yeah, there is that narrative that Rodgers has that last dance style season where he just goes berserk, wants to pad his stats, wants to pad Adams' stats as they enter this last season together before they both find greener pastures next year. There is that narrative. There is that ceiling. I just think after 42 touchdowns last year, he has to – you need that narrative to sustain what he did last year. I think he regresses like in between what he did in 2019 where he only threw like 25, 26 touchdowns between 41 touchdowns. I'm seeing a nice middle ground happening this year.
All right, fair enough. We'll talk about this when we get to the receivers with Rodgers because I feel like there's, at least in my thinking, there's some discrepancy as far as the guy's going to throw for tons of yards. He's going to have a good season, but it seems like, all right, we'll talk about it a little bit now. It seems like you're going really, really heavy to Adams. I mean, like I feel like you gifted him a few more touchdowns just in the past few days. I feel like he bumped from like 11 or 12 to now 15. But the other guys you're not giving much love to at all. And I understand that. There's 3 other guys that are just like kind of ho-hum, we'll see. I feel like one of those guys, and we're talking about Allen Lazard, MVS, and Randall Cobb, I feel like one of those guys you have to be really low on. And maybe it's just we don't know which guy that is. Right.
It's tough to project. I do think it's really just the Adams show, and I'm not really buying into it. We haven't seen Cobb have more than 600. He hasn't hit 600 yards in 4 straight seasons. Even his last with Green Bay and Rodgers, he wasn't great. I know a lot of people hyped up that he's there again, and Rodgers vouched for him. He really wanted him, but I don't think Cobb brings much to the table at this stage. I would have liked Allen Lazard had Cobb not joined.
Yeah.
To me, it's just like all those guys are going to have decent weeks every now and again. I don't think any of them are just steady. In fact, there's a guy on this list who is not on this list. I'm a little bit more intrigued by, and that's Devin Funchess. He was signed there in 2019, got hurt. Didn't play last year due to COVID. Last preseason game sees 8 targets, hauls in 6 of them for I think 80 yards it came down to, looking like his old self. Out of all these guys, Funchess by far brings more to the table in terms of complete route trees, in terms of size, in terms of red zone ability. So if he continues to carve out a role throughout this preseason, not only is that going to hurt these other guys, and that's why I think I started to bump them down a little bit, he himself would probably leap into this depth chart as the upside to be the number 2 in this offense. So as a last-round dart throw, I don't really like Cobb, Lazard, or Scantling. Unless it's best ball, Scantling will have a few blow-up weeks and he'll get projected in your lineup. But otherwise, I think Funchess has the best bet to potentially carve himself out a nice sleeper role in this offense. And certainly if something ever happened to Adams, he has the most complete, like, big body receiver skill set to fill that void, in my opinion.
All right, that's a good tip. That's interesting. And just to be clear, and I mean, who knows if my numbers are even right at this point, but you do have Adams as your wide receiver 2 on projections, but your wide receiver 1 on the big board. You got him catching over 120 balls and getting like 180 targets, something crazy like that.
Almost last year, right?
No, I'm not saying crazy like you were wrong. I'm just saying those are pretty crazy numbers.
It is insane.
Almost 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. Those are big, big, big numbers.
Big numbers from a guy that did it all last year. I think he set the record or was second best, maybe behind only Moss that season in terms of fantasy points per game because he missed a couple and he still put up, 16, 17 touchdowns. I don't know that regresses. When they get in close, they just dial his number. There's multiple times where they'll go for the fade on first down and the goal line, miss it, and then Rodgers goes right back
and
to it.
And then go back to it again. Yeah.
It's unstoppable, the connection and rapport they have. And like I said, if that last dance narrative comes true, Adams and him will have a very, very special season. I love, if I'm not going running back in round 1, like if I'm right around 6, 7, I love getting either Kelce or Adams. As we said earlier, with the running backs, there are some good guys in round 3 to round out your stable if you want to go an elite pass catcher like Adams or Kelce there. I have no problem with it, and I'm drafting at 7 in my main league. I'm hoping I get Adams. I hope no one's watching it right now, but I'm hoping Adams falls to me. I love this guy. I think he's going to have a monster season. How do you not love this guy? I mean, he's amazing.
No, he's great. He's the best guy going probably. Yeah. All right. So we did skip a pretty important fantasy guy at running back, Aaron Jones. You've got him as your RB6 on both lists. And again, hopefully my numbers here are right. 266 for 1264 and 11 touchdowns, adding a little over 40 catches for over 300 yards and another 3 touchdowns. The last update I saw, you had him carrying less than twice as much as A.J. Dillon, but being a big force in the passing game, whereas Dillon is pretty much a nothing there. And certainly we've seen the Packers misuse Jones before. But I think his fantasy value to me ends up being pretty touchdown dependent. I mean, I know that's not a hot take. That's true with a lot of people. Do you see that as a case?
I think with Dillon, yes. Jones, I think because we have Jamal Williams gone now, Jones did run more routes than Williams, but Williams still saw right around 190 routes run last year. He saw about 150 total touches between carries and targets. And I think some of those carries will definitely filter down to Dillon, but I think a lot of the receiving work is going to go to Jones, who's so much more dangerous as a threat in the passing game than Williams ever was. He's been so efficient whenever he's used in the pass game. So with this little bump in receiving, it sends his ceiling through the roof. He's been the running back 2 and running back 5 in back-to-back seasons within this LaFleur zone blocking scheme. He's just so deadly. To me, if you miss out on like the big 3 at the top, your Henry, Cook, C-Mac, then I like Zeke a little more than Aaron Jones. But after that, it's really hard for me to argue anyone ahead of Aaron Jones. He is so steady, consistent, with a big ceiling, a decent floor as well. There's a little bit of an injury concern. But yeah, with this receiving work that could be filtering to him, I have him shooting up the projections because of it.
All right, and we're going to hit some of these, but Charlie Prebs just commented, Adams is the goal line guy.
Oh yeah, he really is. Like, good to see you too, Preble. We got the steady guys coming to all these shows, which I love to see. It's amazing.
Yeah. All right, Tanyan at tight end, Robert Tanyan. You got him for a little over 50 catches, almost 600 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns. To me, that seems about right. To me, he's not a bad wait on a tight end and get this guy if you end up punting on the position. I don't know. You got him as your tight end 13, I think, on projections and 10 on the big board.
Seems about right to me. Yeah, I mean, he was the tight end 3 in fantasy last year, which is psychotic, but that was on the back of 13 touchdowns. I don't expect that again. I think some of those go to Aaron Jones. Some of those go to A.J. Dillon, who could be an absolute monster at the stripe, even if he's a 0 as a receiver. I don't see Tanyan having that type of season again. There is the narrative, like, well, what if we haven't seen the best of Tanyan? He is a good athlete. He works out with Kittle in the offseason. I mean, there is that. But now the fact that they added Cobb, Funchess is back, like, I think that was a product of truly there was no one else besides Adams for him to go to consistently last year because MVS was always banged up. Lazard was always banged up. So Tanyan kind of became the de facto number 2. I just don't see that happening 2 seasons in a row.
All right, fair enough.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.